So, it's a lot of information to hear. A lot of misappropriation of funds, from my understanding. I first, sorry.
Can we have your name real quick?
Yeah, sorry, I'm Courtney Anderson. I'm an ATA over at Johnson Early Childhood Center, possibly somewhere else, I don't know. So my first question is, when this was all happening, Kyle, you've been on the board since 2021.
Mhm.
How were you not aware of what was going on during that time period? Can you answer that?
Yeah, so
Okay,
I can share this with you. When the state of Michigan, so per the guidelines, the application specifically for ESSER 3 does not come to the board for approval.
right.
Rather, the administration fills out that application and submits it. Our policies don't regulate that they have to bring that application to us. So what we discovered was that application, the fact that it wasn't brought to us, counted for all those salaries. And so that's why we're here today, because what we're unveiling through the discoveries is that the application that was submitted, 98% of it was used towards salaries and benefits.
So with that the COVID money being misused, was that illegal or was it legal?
So it was approved by the state. The issue
Okay.
isn't that anything was illegally done, it was irresponsibly done.
Perfect.
There is no sustainability plan to sustain those salaries and benefits that they put the ESSER dollars towards.
Yeah, and
Okay.
again, as I said earlier, that's the big problem is because if you were gonna put it to salaries and benefits, you needed to say like, this is the cutoff, because they were quite clear, like if we did, there was gonna be a cliff that
Right.
you would face.
Well, yeah, because the money ends at some point, you can't
Yes,
just keep
correct.
going, but, so then my other concerns is, being that I do work at Johnson, we are a growing building. We already have numbers coming in from TOTE that we're expected to grow. We've already hired a new special education teacher. Our building currently is basically maxed out, with all rooms being utilized. So with this and the potential growth numbers from that building alone, do you not see predictions in the future where your elementaries would have grown to be bigger? And then how do you take care of the overage of students? Where are they gonna go? Or is it gonna become one of those issues where there's now a flux of students and teachers are now teaching again 30, 35 students like before COVID, because all these COVID babies, they're hitting us.
So I can speak on that. So specifically to the size of where the new early childhood center is, we're already talking with Lee to discuss that size of the building. I know you all know Lee's on top of it. So we're working with her just to make sure that if there are alterations to that building, what those could look like to meet that need for the preschool. In addition, we have in our possession in the district, we do have 2 more district properties that they're offline to the public or to the students
Correct.
because they're rented out, and those specific buildings are the Fisher and Waring buildings. So those buildings will still exist because they're being rented currently in the school district. So if there ever is that need for students, because we're growing, then we do have those additional buildings to fulfill that need. I do want to point out the one thing that we did acknowledge though is for the past 40 years, our district has seen a decline in enrollment every single year for 40. This was the first year, and it was a miracle that we actually grew. And we're appreciative and we want to strive to retain that. But we know we're also looking at the realistic history of where the Taylor School District is. But we do know for a fact that we do have those buildings as that buffer if needed.
I have one quick question if I can.
Yeah.
Okay. So you have all these incentives for people to retire.
Yes.
What happens when you don't get those numbers? Because I just got a list of everyone from 1995 all the way to now. What are those projections that you think are gonna happen? You don't hit it.
So currently, we've been talking with our unions, specifically to talk about what are the expected numbers. I know at the middle school, the thought and the estimate is that we're roughly gonna have about 10 middle school teachers that are retiring this year.
There's more with potential, but
Yes.
that's what we're expecting.
And just alone tonight at one of the elementaries that I was presenting at, there were 2 teachers in the room that said they were retiring. So I know that there are retirements that are in the system. We're gonna account for those. If we don't meet that threshold, again, we have that 3 or 4 years of retirements to meet that deficit need, to cover that deficit.
And that was why I wanted to speed up the timeline, was to
Yes.
give us that information so we can start having those conversations.
Well, yeah, because
Figure
you're
out what the
trying
next
to
step is.
keep from layoffs happening.
Yeah.
Correct.
you know, which I totally get. I appreciate you guys giving me time. I was a lot more hot-headed before I came in here. But I know you guys kind of walked into a mess, and a lot of you did. And, you know, I thank you for being more transparent than I thought you were going to be. Would you guys ever be opposed to actually going to schools and talking with staff? Because that meeting that's gonna happen on the 8th, I think it's gonna be out of control. There's gonna be a lot of people. So if you're not opposed, you know,
No, that's been in our,
Johnson's my
it's been in our
family. Those are
talks
my
as well,
people.
so.
Yes,
Yeah.
so that, yes, we're gonna be doing the community Q&A as well as we're gonna be talking with those buildings and going to those buildings and also hosting actual town halls at those elementaries to talk to the families as well.
Dan Johnson.
Yes.
Don't forget us, man.
No.
We have the littles, but like, we're trying, okay? We're mighty.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Tess Martinez. I'm also a part of the Johnson team. I'm a para over there. My main concerns is when you have all these building maps and stuff, Johnson, the new school is nowhere to be found from there. I know you said they're moving to Eureka Heights. I just want to know what's going to happen with the special ed kiddos there.
So I think the big part here is we know there's lots that goes into the licensing for the preschool program. And we know that there are gonna have to be upgrades. And it was at a point where I don't think we could have laid it all out in one of those maps at this point because we're still putting all that together of what the licensing is gonna require in that.
But it will be done on time
Yes.
and
Yeah,
everything?
yeah.
So our biggest thing is to, when we look at those maps, a lot of those class sizes are based on square footage. So we know that we have to get the square footage of all those rooms so that we know how many kids can be in those. So that's why the maps, we couldn't put it on there today because there's a lot of those licensing requirements we have to filter through, which we're working with the
Thank you.
Rich Pratt, 24403 Hayes. You mentioned wearing, and that is my concern. Did you look at deed restrictions on the schools you're closing? Wearing exists because you sold it to, you're gonna sell it and you couldn't. I just want to make sure this the district doesn't end up with more vacant property we can't do anything with that we have to pay for.
So the buildings that would be, so that Randall building that's being demolished and the Taylor Parks building that's being demolished, both properties do not have deed restriction.
I'm saying the fine.
Yes.
Okay, that was my concern.
Stephanie Pratt, same address as his. I am here as a parent and an employee. I also work at Johnson. My first question actually is, if Johnson is so critical to your plans, why were we not listed or handled as part of that utilization study?
So that, specifically the Johnson Elementary School, as part of the utilization study, that's because of all of those, again, licensing restrictions that we have to be able to map out. So when it comes to the square footage, we have to know the exact square footage because that determines how many students in that room, which then the students per room determines the building capacity. So right now, we're working with our facilities team to be able to measure out those rooms, as well as taking into consideration the additional 4 bathrooms that we would have to build at that building.
You've spoken with Ms. McKenzie about the licensing concerns because last time it took over a year
Yes.
to get the building licensed. We have concerns that it would not be able to be done over a summer.
Yeah, and we've
Been having those meetings currently,
Okay.
having those discussions, yes.
My second question is, part of the reason that, my understanding is part of the reason Johnson was closed as an elementary school and reopened as a preschool is because of its proximity to Blair Moody. So how was moving Kenyon next to Blair Moody going to help any enrollment in the district?
I'm not aware of why Johnson was closed. I was a student in the district during that time. But I know that when we're looking at the actual property, key thing is we can't put an elementary there right now the way that it exists. That's why we are proposing those alterations to make that functional parking, the inflow and outflow of cars, so that way it can be operational as an elementary.